It is 9:02, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. We have a quorum present. I'm going to let Mr. Fisher here introduce our new Planning Commissioner members, or member.
Okay, we'd like to welcome Mr. Trinidad Aguirre to the Planning Commission. Pleasure to have you on board. And also our two new planners, Kyle Warren and Rafael Alvarado, are here today.
Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome aboard, Trinidad.
Thank you.
So the first item is the consent agenda. Commission may request for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for presentation and public comment. Otherwise, the consent agenda will be considered in one vote. All items on the consent agenda have been recommended for approval by staff with no opposition received to date. Since some of the items on the consent agenda may require a public hearing, the Commission will accept public comment on any item on the consent agenda in one public hearing. The only item on the consent agenda is the approval of the August 16th Planning Commission meeting notes. So I'm going to call, I guess I'm going to open it up for public comment. Does anyone wish to speak on the notes from last month's meeting? Okay, I'm going to close public comment.
I think there's one change that we need to make on the okay, so, and it's just clarification. Travis was in charge of the meeting, and it just has on under number 10A, future meetings, it says that I indicated when the meeting would be for the next one, which I believe was Travis.
Okay.
Okay, and that's at the bottom of page 11?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll make that change.
All right, anyone else have change recommendations? All right, do we have a motion?
Move to approve with changes. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve with the changes that Terry outlined. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Regular agenda, subdivision plats. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. A, Alexander Cargyle Edition, Section 1, a request for approval of a final plat of the Alexander Cargyle Edition being 1.575 acres located southwest of Jackson Street and Industrial Avenue, and a variance from Chapter 10.3A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 50 feet for Jackson Street, an urban arterial street.
And I am Kyle Warren, Principal Planner for the city. Looking at Cargyle Addition Section 1, it's 1.575 acres to the south of South Jackson Street and Industrial Avenue. It's in District 5, Lane Carter, ASU College Hills neighborhood. And this is the final plat of the two lots. Allowed variances, special circumstances resulting in unnecessary hardship, overriding public interest, and literal enforcement. And the request was the partial variance to widen the street by a portion of the full required incremental half width. For South Jackson Street, the minimum width is 64 feet, and in this case requiring 7 additional feet. Our analysis was the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public safety, health, or welfare, or be injurious to other property. South Jackson Street intersects a railroad track immediately to the southeast of the Cargyle plat. Because of this, South Jackson Street narrows at the crossing, so a street widening would not be advisable so close to this crossing. The conditions upon which the request for a variance is based are not unique to the property for which the variance is sought and are not applicable generally to other property. South Jackson Street has an existing pavement with curbs and gutters that is sufficient for traffic in this area. Due to the fact South Jackson Street is also in a capital improvement project area, staff believes that any new development on the Cargyle Addition will be accommodated by the existing street plus any new city improvements. And lastly, because the particular physical surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions of the specific property involved, a particular hardship to the owner would result as distinguished from a mere inconvenience. the strict letter of these regulations is carried out. And widening the street by additional 7 feet would then create an irregular jog at the railroad crossing, which would lead to unsafe driving conditions, which I kind of already noted. The variance will not in any significant way vary the provisions of applicable ordinances. We do not believe that applicable ordinances will be significantly varied if the variance was granted. Our rationale is it's not detrimental. Current 50 feet paving width of street created to service the adjacent plats functions adequately. Uniqueness, paving exclusively on one side is unique in this case. Hardship, no particular hardship, but street serves area adequately. Variation, no significant variation of city ordinances if variances are granted. And our recommendation is for the Planning Commission to approve the final plat and to approve the requested variance subject to 4 conditions of approval shown after this slide. And just prior to plat recordation, provide a copy of Tom Green County Appraisal District certification indicating that there are no delinquent taxes on the subject property of the subdivision. 2, prior to plat recordation, a drainage study shall be submitted, stormwater design manual, section 213. Public improvements are deemed necessary by the study, submit construction plan and profile sheets for approval. 3, prior to plat recordation, prepare and submit plans for required improvements to South Jackson Street by half the additional increment necessary to comprise the minimum paving width. And 4, prior to plat recordation, install necessary water and wastewater services lines to new lot. And that's it.
Thank you, Kyle.
No problem.
Does anyone have questions for the staff? All right, we're going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please state your name and your single-member district or address.
Russell Gully, SKG Engineering, for this one, single-member District 5. We would ask your approval of this plat with the variance as requested. And then we would also like to ask, as typically done on these types of plats, that we could or would defer the drainage study to a later stage of development, and then also defer the water and sewer service lines to a later stage. The proponent or the property owner on this intends to put storage units here. So depending on what is worked out on there, there may or may not be water and sewer services necessary for this tract. So if they are required as part of the building permitting stage, they'll be installed at that time. So we would ask that the drainage study and water and sewer services be deferred. We'll put in the typical request to the city engineer for that. We would just kind of like y'all's motion to include the allowance for those deferrals. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for Mr. Gully?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? Please come forward.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Pate. I'm city engineer interim. We don't have a problem with the deferral. However, since it becomes a baseline study, basically, the current impervious surface is what the study would consider. The rest of the surface, about 75% of this is grassed over, so it's impervious. What we would request is that the commission include a requirement that any future development require that drainage study. The 5% rule would be not applied here. So in some instances, when there's 5% of the property or less that's going to be developed, the drainage study is deferred or not required. In this case, we have over 30% of the property already developed. And so we would ask that the Planning Commission stipulate that any further development requires a drainage study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak on this case?
Yes, my name is Sylvia Martinez. I live at 818 San Jacinto. And before you do agree or not agree to this, you should look into the drainage, because when it rains a lot, the people can't go across Jackson Street. I came for something else, but since I live down the street and when it rains, you can't pass through there because of flooding. So I hope whatever y'all decide, you would look into the flooding because we do have a problem on Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, so Mr. Gully requested that we defer the drainage study until further development on the lot or until permitting.
Yes, sir. As part of the permitting process, we'll prepare a drainage study, as Mr. Pate indicated. We're going to treat the site as if it's fully native, the 0.3 runoff coefficient, and then we'll show it as it's going to be fully developed after the permit's issued and the improvements are in place. So, yes, sir.
And you also requested to defer the water and sewer taps until permitting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, and then I have noted that the city is asking that we defer the drainage study until any further development of the site occurs. So, does anyone have questions for the staff or wish to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the final plat, approve the variance for the paving width, and defer the drainage study, water and sewer until permitting stage. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I have a question before we take a vote. Does that address your concern about future development if we defer it to the permitting stage? Yes. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? 6-0. All right, item B, first replat in the southwest 1/4 of Block 52, Fort Concho addition. A request for approval of a first replat in the southwest 1/4 of Block 52, Fort Concho addition, and a variance to maintain the paving width of 36 feet for East Highland Avenue, an urban local street.
Kyle Warren, city planner. I just want to say, before I get into this, we caught this Friday at about 4 that this doesn't actually need a variance, but we're going to go through with it nonetheless because it was already on the agenda and we thought it was too late to pull it. But it was kind of an interesting case, and I'll explain further into this. So the first replat, southwest 1/4 of Fort Concho addition, is 0.205 acres near the intersection of East Highland and Oaks, District 3, Harry Thomas, Fort Concho neighborhood. And here's the picture of the plat. Again, allowed variance, special circumstances resulting in unnecessary hardship, overriding public interest, literal enforcement. And their request was a partial variance to widen the street by a portion of the full required incremental half width. For East Highland Street, the minimum pavement width is 40 feet. In this case, requiring 2 additional feet or sidewalk. And we said, after further review, staff has found this particular location does have a sidewalk with a street pavement width of 36 feet, and therefore no street width variance is needed. And one thing that was somewhat unique about this was that it had a 100-foot right-of-way on an urban street, which is kind of unusual, but the sidewalk was very close to the frontage of the property, and we had missed that initially, so we're just, it doesn't need a variance because of this. Everything's up to standard for the replat. And that's basically how it's going. And I let the conditions of approval in because we did some last-minute changes. But that is it.
All right. Do you know the approximate square footage of these lots?
Off the top of my head, no, I do not.
Okay.
Kyle, I might be able to address that. I think it's roughly, and I could be wrong, 3,600 to 4,000 square feet. They did get a variance from the ZBA So that's why they're a little bit smaller.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else have questions for Kyle? All right, we're going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell Gully with SKG, Single Member District 3 for this case. Would ask your approval of this. I guess the variance in condition 2 effectively is satisfied now. There are existing structures on the property, so we believe water and sewer service lines are present. So depending on verification of that, potentially the other condition regarding water and sewer services lines would be met. So be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for Mr. Gully?
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, we're going to close public comment. Anyone wish to share their thoughts or make a motion?
Turn on my mic. Make a motion to approve the first replat in the south quarter of Block 52.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Fifth replat in Lot 27, Lakeview Town Center, Section 1. A request for approval of a fifth replat in Lot 27, Lakeview Town Center, Section 1, located southeast of North Bryant Boulevard and West 29th Street, and a variance from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 56 feet for West 29th Street, an urban arterial street.
Thank you, Chair Stribling, Planning Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Chief Planner. Our next case is a fifth replat in Lot 27, Lakeview Town, Section 1. It's 8.607 acres. This was originally platted a couple of years back. You all had approved it. 27D and E they're showing here was actually just one lot. It was approved. So this is coming back. They're going to create a flag lot at the south and cut it up into two pieces. So you're now going to get 27D and 27E. So this is an existing shopping plaza that sits on 27D. The flag lot with the access drive will allow them access to a future development behind there. The zoning is CG with a little piece of CGCH, so it's currently zoned commercial. It could allow future commercial uses. You all had approved a sidewalk with the third replat. Staff's position is the same. That was deferred to time of future development, but back then it was just one lot, and so we agreed with that at the time, given that it was a shopping plaza. Now that there's potential future development on 27E as a separate lot, we're requesting that the sidewalk be done now as a condition of the plat and install that sidewalk prior to plat recordation. So this is a map of the area that has existing sidewalks you can see in the yellow. So when Walgreens was built, which is just at the corner here, and then also the Wendy's, the second lot from the corner. Walmart has a couple stub outs here with ramps for a signalized intersection. So this is pretty much the last gap. And then as you go to Martin Luther King Drive, city installed sidewalks all the way down. So this is a commercial street. This is an arterial road, and we believe it's appropriate to have that connection in the future. A lot of people will be walking in the neighborhood. So this is a look at the picture of the existing plaza. So that sidewalk would run along there. It's pretty tight, so if they need to do an easement, they could put that on their final plat and just show that there's an easement if any of that encroaches over onto private property, but there may be some space between the curb and the trees to do that. There's the Walgreens sidewalk, and then as you go east, there's looks like a older vehicle, or some sort of commercial building right there. So staff recommends approval of the plat. It conforms with the comprehensive plan and purpose statements. There is a variance required as well, since 29th Street isn't quite 64 feet, but at 56 feet wide, there's a future capital improvement project in the area. That street does function adequately, we believe, and so the additional 4 feet width is not going to be necessary. We've talked about the sidewalks in the area already and the reason for justification. So staff recommends approval of the fifth replat in Lot 27, Lakeview Town, Section 1. and with the sidewalk, and approval of a variance to allow to maintain a 56-foot paving width on 29th Street, subject to the 8 conditions of approval in your staff report. Any questions or comments?
Anyone have questions for Mr. Fisher? All right, we're going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG, single-member District 4 for this one. The developer's not opposed to the sidewalk along 29th Street. They would just like the ability kind of to defer that and build that sidewalk whenever they're putting the improvements in that they're proposing. I don't know the specifics yet, potentially a hotel maybe there going in. So they would like the ability to be able to install the sidewalk kind of while they're doing the construction associated with the proposed infrastructure, the development of Lot 27E. So other than that, we're prepared to do everything else and would be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for Mr. Gully? Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, I'm going to close public comment.
Chair Stribling, I just wanted to make one note. If you look on the plan where it says 27E, the lot to the immediate west was platted but not recorded. So in our conditions, we've made one minor revision to change 27D to 27E and 27E to 27F, just because the lot that was platted to the west was going to be called, if it gets recorded, will be called 27D already, so to avoid duplication.
So 27D is the existing shopping center. What would it become?
So it would become 27E, and then 27E would become 27F. And this lot down here, not the one right on the corner, but the one next to it was platted into 2. And so if that gets recorded and they were ever to split that, it would just avoid duplication of names later. Just a
Okay.
minor thing, just so you guys knew.
Okay.
Just one more note, staff would be supportive of Mr. Gully's request for a deferral agreement on deferring
The
that
sidewalk.
sidewalk till it's developed.
Okay. Anyone else want to share their thoughts or make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the deferment of the sidewalks to further development.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented, deferring the sidewalk until development of Lot 27F. It's noted as 27E, I believe, on this presentation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right, first replat of Lot 4, Fred Beck's subdivision. Request for approval of the first replat of Lot 4, Fred Beck subdivision, located east of Armstrong and East 47th Streets, and a variance from Chapter 10-3A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 0 feet without curb and gutter for an unnamed urban local street. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Jeff Fisher again. Our next case today is a fifth replat of Lot 4, Fred Beck's subdivision. The zoning is R&E. So the applicant owns these 3, and they were legally platted lots at one time. They were cut up, so they're not configured in the same way as they were originally platted. So we'll call them remainders within an existing subdivision. They want to take those 3 remainders, consolidate them into one lot, possibly demolish their existing home and build another home there. So it'll be one house on one lot at the end of the day. This is the existing replat. So one issue as we looked at this, the original Fred Beck, which was over 100 years ago, to the east side shows an unnamed street right-of-way of 60 feet. And so that's that on the drawing on the left. So this street needs to be accounted for. At the same time, this is the first replat in that entire area. So Their request is to not pave that street since they already have direct access on Armstrong, and that's not changing, which we believe is reasonable. However, losing the opportunity of the street if other people come in and replat. So our compromise position is to do a deferral and not require the street until the developers, so they're 4 and 5, so until 20 and 21 go in, which could be 20 years from now or never, who knows, but they won't have to be required to do this until a long time from now. So in a sense, we're not requiring the variance, but we're also not requiring the paving width anytime soon. 9 notices were mailed out because this is a residential replat. We received 2 in support from the neighbors in the green stars. Staff recommends approval. This is ranch and estate zoning. It allows housing. The replat's consistent with the purpose statements. And again, the paving, currently it would not be detrimental to the area to not have to put in the paving now, but again, down the road could be. So we just believe that the deferral agreement will allow them to go forward right now. Staff recommends approval of the first replat of Lot 4 Fred Beck's and denial of the variance, subject to 4 conditions of approval. So tax certificate, and I'll just, a couple minor changes on the labeling on the plat. Install wastewater service lines, and then this is condition 4. So if you approve the variance, there are options. Either they have to pave it now, or they complete variance, or the last one would be to enter into a development agreement at the time the properties to the east go to develop. So that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions or comments for us.
Can you pull up an aerial map of the lots, please? Perfect. Okay, so the unpaved street is on the east side of this property?
Yes, and I think if there weren't future development lots to the east of that street, we might have a different opinion and just give them a full variance. The problem is that all these lots require access onto that street. And so at some point, again, could be 20 years, could be 10 years, that street will likely be installed in order to support development on those lots to the east.
And what's east of those lots?
So that would be this area in here.
No. What's on the east side of those lots? It looks like a road that's running north and south that's maybe Caliche or something.
We would have to go check that.
Okay?
There's nothing there right now, though.
No, it's all undeveloped, it looks,
Like not even a dirt road, right?
Correct.
between the lots. But look on the east side of the lots.
It's a Caliche.
So the city has the right-of-way for a road that runs behind this property that's replatting.
Correct.
But there are no improvements that have been made.
That's correct.
And you're proposing that the applicant of this replat would potentially pay to pave their half of that road?
Only at the time that the adjacent properties to the east ever go to develop, which we have no applications in for anybody actually in this area, and we haven't ever had any in for many, it's just a security for the city that at some point when they do it, that there's a fair share of costs.
Okay. So how does the city secure their interest if we defer it to an indefinite period of time?
Do you want to answer, John?
Yeah, we typically do that through a deferral agreement that the property owner sign, or the applicant signs, and that gets filed in the county deed records, and so it attaches to the property, so that is an obligation of subsequent owners, so it could change hands 5 times. 20 years from now, that obligation would still exist as on the title to the property.
Okay.
If the variance was approved as stated, what portion of that road would the property owners be requested to develop?
This is very close to the end of the city limits, but it's still in our future urban area. So they would be responsible for, so the way this works is the street has to be 40 feet wide for a local. They're responsible for half plus 6 feet if they're the first one going forward because of a minimum standard in the ordinance for fire and public safety. So they would be responsible for 26 feet of pavement.
Would the road to the north not have to be developed as well in order for the access to be made to the lots that are immediately east of this one? I mean, if you're tying it to the lots immediately to the east, And the, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, if those lots immediately to the east were to develop, they likely wouldn't develop before the lots either north or south.
Okay.
Because they wouldn't have access to a road. If they really wanted to, they would be responsible for getting that road back to either the north or the south.
The developers of that road, the developers of those lots?
Yeah, if you're on a lot like that on an unbuilt road and you want to develop first.
Yes.
You have to build the road all the way back. Just like if if you wanted water or sewer, you have
Yeah.
to send the line all the way back to where there's an existing line.
Yes.
Similarly, you would have to build the road back to the existing road network.
Okay. Thank you. All right, anyone else have questions on this one?
Jeff, on the other side of what we're assuming is the Caliche Road to the east, are there more platted lots similar to the layout of this? Do you know offhand?
I don't believe so, but I
Okay.
would need to verify.
Okay, just because, I mean, that is a lot of like ranch land up there, so. All of these lots have access.
Well, the lots that are on the east side are under separate
Right,
plat.
right.
So, you want to open it up for public comment? Mr. Gully?
Good morning, Russell with SKG, Single Member District 2 for this one. To the east of that, back when San Angelo Packing was operating, there's 2 large center pivots out there, and that was actually a wastewater disposal or irrigation area for San Angelo Packing. They hadn't been operating for a few years, but I think they're going to be opening back up potentially. So yes, to the east of that was all kind of irrigation farmland for San Angelo Packing. Our request for that would be, if we look at, there's 447 feet of frontage along that undeveloped roadway to the east. At current dollars, if they're doing their incremental half, that would be about $56,000 worth of paving improvements for a lot in this location, effectively rendering that lot of zero value. And so really to strap a property owner with a future obligation, you're really hurting, killing the value of that property. It'll be a hard decision for them if they want to move forward, even with putting that cloud over their property for forever, for some unknown period of time that somebody else may have to experience. So we would ask that we just be granted the full variance from the improvements for that unnamed street to the east, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Anyone have questions for Mr. Gully?
Thank
Do
you.
you know when this subdivision was platted?
As Jeff said, it was over 100 years old, we believe. It's been a long time ago.
Early 1900s.
Early 1900s. Okay. Thank you.
You may recall that this is not dissimilar from a case we had up in the Lakeview area.
Yes.
Where we had quite a bit of discussion over whether the current developer would have to have the obligation of a street, or if in order to promote that development, we would kick the can down the road, basically. And just so that is a precedent, we recommended against it, but the commission did approve that. This is a case, maybe even a better argument in this case, that if those lots to the east were to develop, they would need that road.
Yes.
And so it's not unreasonable to ask them to pay for that road. Now, again, you're shifting all of the cost to those properties to the east, but you would be saving this particular property. And so that's really the question you're weighing here.
I understand exactly what you're saying.
So if any of the other properties, north and south of the requested replat, were to do any improvements on their property, it would automatically essentially trigger them potentially putting in the road behind there as well, correct?
You mean those to the east or the ones
So
in
if
the?
we're looking, I guess, north and south of the red outline, so
Those-
if there's.
No, because those, as Jeff mentioned, those properties are already platted.
Okay.
And so only a replat like this would trigger that obligation, and it's because they're combining multiple properties.
Okay.
In this case, that's triggering this replat.
Thank you.
And I just connected to Wi-Fi because I wanted to address y'all's questions about that road to the east. It does show as a caliche road, but it's part of private property. It's not a city right-of-way. So I think the concern is, and we understand the developer, obviously, that's a lot of money just for one lot at this time, but it's, the lots to the east, their only legal access right now would be from that street right-of-way. The one to the east is on private property and is not connected. So I think that's what makes this situation different. These lots that they're replatting now, at least they've got a connection off Armstrong, but the lots to the east, their only connection so far would be that street right-of-way in the middle that's not built.
And there's what, 700 feet from the north end of this lot to 50th Street? Probably more. If it's 450 feet of frontage. 900 feet.
So it's actually the same property owner as what I suspected. When it was San Angelo Packing, and now it's Robinson Meats is showing up. The same property owner that owns the land to the east of these platted lots owns all of those platted lots. So it's, we just would request that the property owner here, since they're fronting onto Armstrong and not utilizing that, not be kind of strapped with that obligation. We realize it's a deferral, but it's a very unknown kind of overhang on that property forever that really, as anybody in the real estate business understands, how it severely impacts that property. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gully. All right, anyone else wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment. Anyone want to share their thoughts? This one's tricky. These lots are so deep, it looks like it would be unlikely that the lots to the east get developed anytime soon, especially if they're owned by the meatpacking company.
When I'm assuming that it's most likely all brush towards the back of all of those lots too, so even if that owner decided to run a road into the unnamed street, that's gonna be an additional probably $30,000 for them to, potentially put a caliche road back to connect into a named street.
At this time. So these lots were platted 100 years ago. If it's another 100 years before the other parts developed,
Right.
then you would have the money to put the street in at that time,
Yes.
which is going to be a lot more. So,
Well, and I think Russell's point that's relevant here is the access to all these lots is Armstrong. There's not development occurring east of Armstrong, and there's not frontage of these lots that's being developed anytime soon because all the lots are oriented to the west. So
I would like to make a motion to approve the first replat of Lot 4 and to approve the variance of the paving to 0 feet without curb and gutter.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve with also a variance for no paving on the unnamed road. All in favor, say aye.
What question?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Terry, when
Yes.
you say, so they're not going to be responsible in the future
Correct,
for that road?
correct.
I agree. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve and grant a variance for no paving on the unnamed road. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right. Replat of lots 7 and 8, Roy R. Boykin subdivision. Request for approval of replat of tracts 7 and 8, Roy R. Boykin subdivision located southwest of Paint Rock Road and Loop 306, and a variance from Chapter 103A1 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a right-of-way width of 50 feet for Dakota Drive, a rural local street, and a variance from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 27 feet for Dakota Drive, a rural local street. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Jeff Fisher again. This is a replat of Track 7 and 8 Roy Boykin addition. This one's very straightforward, so I'm going to go through this quickly. It's essentially to remove an encroachment of one of their accessory metal buildings on the property. So basically, the south lot's going to get a little bit bigger, and then the north lot's going to get a little bit smaller. These are in the ranch and estate zoning, so they, yes, ranch and estate zoning, so they well exceed the all of the information here. And actually, I'm sorry, we're going through this really quickly. This is in the ETJ and will be future urban area. So if it goes to RS1, those lots are much bigger than required. They are asking for variances, though, from the right-of-way and the paving width, and staff is supporting both of those requests as well. Single-family residences in this area, the replat is consistent with the purpose statements. We don't believe that this is detrimental in supporting the variances. If they had to dedicate the additional right-of-way, there are septic system drain fields and structures in that right-of-way. The other issue here is, even though it's close to the urban area, it's still in the ETJ, and so we've identified this as a rural road. So if this ever became urban, they have the 50 feet of right-of-way, but dedicating that extra 5 feet creates the problem for them. So we're in support of those variances. Again, there's no new homes being created. It's simply an adjustment of a lot line. So no drain on the street network if we approve this. So we'll also support the paving width variance. So staff recommends approval of the plat. Both variances subject to 5 conditions in your staff report. And again, most of this is just minor, changing the title block and renaming to say tracks instead of lots, because they are tracks. And that concludes our presentation. Any questions or comments?
Do you mind pulling the conditions of approval up again, please? Okay. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Fisher? All right. We're going to open it up for public comment.
I believe the applicant's engineer is not here today, but she is in support of us supporting her variance requests.
Okay. All right. Anyone wish to speak on this case? I'm going to close public comment. Anyone have any opinions or want to make a motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0. Item F, preliminary plat of Block 4, Section 2, Old Christoval Road, Industrial Park. Request for approval of preliminary plat in Block 4, Section 2, Old Christoval Road, Industrial Park, being 30.35 acres southeast of Old Christoval Road and South Chadbourne Street.
Thank you, Jeff Fisher again. Again, this one's also very straightforward. I'll run this through quickly. They're just platting one lot that's 2.35 acres for future development. This is in an industrial area, so it's got CG, that should be CH and ML zoning. And then in order to do that, not have to plat the remainder, they're going to preliminary plat the 30.25 acres at the back. So really what facilitated this was just the one square in blue. We believe this conforms with the preliminary conforms with the final, and all of them conform with the purpose statements. Lot 1 is just a simple plat consistent with the same boundaries on the preliminary. The ML and CH zoning support heavy commercial and industrial, and the replat is consistent with the purpose statements in the ordinance. So staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat with 5 conditions and the replat of that lot with 6 conditions of approval. This is very close to one you all approved in June along Dan Hanks. There seems to be more and more development activity in that area, which is good for the city. So this concludes our presentation, and if you have any questions.
Could we see the conditions, please?
Sure. So again, most of this is just some minor renaming. They will need a drainage study along with the preliminary plat, identify utility easement, and then note on the plat about fire hydrants for access. And then on the replat, again, standard stuff, tax certificate, make sure the preliminary plat's signed first so they could record the final plat, submit a revised plat, just, again, naming conventions, also a drainage study, connect water service lines to the new lot. And again, because this is on septic, the standard comment, provide a site plan showing the existing structures with approval from the county health department.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Russell with SKG, single member District 1. For this one, would ask your approval as presented and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gully. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, we're going to close public comment.
Make a motion to approve the preliminary plat and the first replat of Block 4, Section 2, Old Cristobal Industrial Park as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the staff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0. Item G, first replat of Block 4, Section 2, Old Cristobal Road Industrial Park. Request for approval of first replat in Block 4, Section 2, Old Cristobal Road Industrial Park, being 2.35 acres southeast of Old Cristobal Road and South Chadbourn Street. That was the same case, was it not?
No.
No. Right next to it. Same
Right next
area.
door. Yep.
Acres, and Travis just read G.
No, that's correct. So the final plat is actually cover most of that territory, and then the preliminary includes that blue as well as the remainder. So the preliminary will just be a little bit bigger.
What we
Right,
voted
but-
on just a few minutes ago was F and G.
So this
Okay.
will be
We did-
H and I.
Yeah, so I did read, that was right. So we approved G 6-0 when we approved F. Okay, so now, do you want me to read H and I in together?
Yes, please.
Okay, so preliminary plat, air motor addition. A request for approval of a final plat of air motor addition being 10.16 acres southeast of Old Cristobal Road and South Chadbourn Street. Final plat, air motor addition, a request for approval of a final plat of air motor addition being 9.134 acres southeast of Old Cristobal Road and South Chadbourn Street, and a variance from Chapter 10.3A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 25 feet for Dan Hanks Lane and Urban Collector Street.
Thank you, Chair Stribling. Jeff Fisher again. So this case, similar to the last one, this was triggered by a building permit request for a warehouse building, and that triggered platting. So they're going to do a final plat of the 9.134 acres and then just leave the rest inside a preliminary plat. This is the whole thing right here with buildings. So there'll be a future warehouse that's going to go down in this area and here. And they've already got a paint shop and some other warehouse activities up here, and then just leave this area in here to for future reference. This one does trigger a variance request on Dan Hanks Lane because it is a collector, and we've talked about this in that previous case in June. All of Dan Hanks Lane, all of the paving width was built on the left side of the street. So that 25 feet on the left of Dan Hanks was built, but all the development that's going to happen on the east side, of course, wouldn't have to do that pavement. So what they've done is they've drawn it this way. Staff would, similar to that previous plat, where on the Fred Beck edition, we would support the variance, but do a deferral agreement on the that little strip on the bottom that touches Dan Hanks Lane. So again, similar to that last case, it's CH and ML zoning. It's consistent with the industrial designation. Replat's consistent with the purpose statements. As mentioned, all the paving is on the west side, so we do want it, but we are flexible and we're willing to do the deferral agreement. In this case, we would defer it to when, since the west side's already being developed, we would defer it to when the future collector to the south gets installed, and that would be the trigger That would give them the most flexibility and the longest time out. So when this collector, this property here, I guess, goes to develop, or this collector gets built, at that time, they would have to give that, but that could be, again, many years from now. So that concludes staff's presentation. There was only one condition for the preliminary and then 5 conditions for the final. So again, just a preliminary drainage study for the preliminary, and then the final taxes show the front building line. Again, if this is a variance, there's the verbiage for the deferral agreement. That's it for staff. Anyone has any questions? Any applicants here?
I do have questions.
Sure.
This deferral, is the deferral for the entire lot or for the final plat only?
For the final plat only.
Why wouldn't it be for the entire lot?
Because the preliminary plat is, the road paving would be only triggered, and the variance request is triggered with the final plat. The preliminary plat is just a blueprint. So when they come in, if they were to come in and plat that other lot in the future, then that would be the trigger for that deferral agreement as well.
So did they not have frontage on Dan Hanks that would not be triggered?
Correct. So the area in the
So
blue.
we'd have a couple of sections of, I mean, are they going to come in and put in just paving along the frontage of Dan Hanks on the blue highlighted sections? Is that what you, Dan Hanks is on the west side of this lot?
Correct. So the
Correct.
only responsibility for them, and we would be flexible with the deferral, is just this section down here. That's the only section that physically touches the street. We don't have anything in our ordinance to, as I understand it, to prevent this sort of configuration up here. So this area here would, from here to here, they would do a deferral agreement for that piece, and then they would have no obligation from here to here. Please let us know if that made sense.
Well, it does. I don't think that it achieves what you're trying to accomplish here. Can you go back to the overview map? So you're saying that Dan Hanks is a 25-foot road running from Chadburn south?
To the end of this property, correct. And it's all on the west side of the street.
Okay. How wide is that road supposed to be?
50.
50 feet. And there's no stretch from Chadburn to the southern end of this lot that is more than 25 feet?
I believe so. This is the first, I think what triggered this is the first development on the east side of the street that was replatted.
Okay.
So sooner or later, this was going to happen. All the ones we've approved so far, the old Cristoval today, and then the one in June for the oil field company was all north, or excuse me, all north of here, but all on the west side. So now we have one on the east, and all the right-of-way and paving was on the west side. So this is what triggered this.
Okay. So how wide is that little southern flag?
Let's see. Oh, let me go forward here. So that looks like it's 98 feet.
And how long is their frontage on Dan Hanks in the preliminary plat?
Should be 739 feet.
Okay. So unless they final plat the remainder of that frontage on Dan Hanks, we're going to have 600 feet of frontage that's not going to get widened?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG, Single Member District 1 for this case. Humor me for a sec with a quick little story. I was recently traveling and struck up a conversation with another passenger on an airplane and said, "Where are you from?" I said, "From San Angelo." And she said, "Air motor. I know where that is. We've got a windmill. I live in Iowa, and I've got a windmill on my property, has air motor, San Angelo, Texas on it." I'm like, awesome, that's cool. So you want to talk about an industry that effectively puts San Angelo on the map all over the world, really, is air motor. And so they're kind of at a point here, they're wanting to add a little over 11,000 square feet of building to help their manufacturing and their production and for their facility. And so we've been assisting them with the permitting process, submitted for building permit, and then we got caught with, the subdivision regulations say if you're unplatted, we're over 5 acres, so we're exempt there, but because we're wanting to add a building over 5,000 square feet, it triggers the subdivision platting. For years and years, that used to not be the case. It's been 2 or 3 years ago, we recently revised the subdivision regulations. I was against it, but that lowered the in the case where you have unplatted land with existing buildings, it used to be 50% of the building area that you could they'd give you a building permit on, but it was revised to 50% or no more than 5,000 square feet. So here we are today trying to get a building permit, and now they're faced with the platting side of things. So, and I want to thank staff. They've been working, we've been trying to navigate this whole thing, and they've been great in working with us on how to best accomplish this. And so that's why we're kind of in this funny configuration that you see today, because we tried one scenario and it's like, oh, well, if it triggered bathrooms or septic systems or parking, or so it was all of this maneuvering that we were trying to do with staff's help, trying to figure out the most efficient way to get us to a spot that they could go build their 11,000 square foot building and help their business and help San Angelo. And so this is kind of where we are today. And so really, honestly, Air Motor's kind of at the crossroads of, do I scale back and just build a 5,000 square foot building this year and then wait 12 months and then go add another 5,000 square feet? Or do we go through the platting process and now I've got to widen Dan Hanks Lane for the full length, or maybe only 98 feet of it, or maybe not at all. I'm at the end of it. It's kind of navigating all of this stuff. We're just, with the price of steel and everything else, we're kind of already over budget, just kind of struggling through this. So at the end of the day, we would ask for a full variance from the improvements to Dan Hanks Lane. If we need to do the deferral agreement for that 98 feet, we'll do that. We even wanted to come in and ask, can we get a variance from having to do this platting altogether, from a variance from 5,000 square feet limit to 12,000 square feet limit, but we were told that's on the front end, we can't do that. So really, we would like your approval of this plat and preliminary plat with a full variance. If that's not in the cards today, then we would do the deferral agreement as staff is recommending for that 98 feet. And then also for the preliminary plat, we would ask that we include the deferral of the drainage study to a later stage. On all the other ones, the one we just heard, there was the deferral for the drainage study on the preliminary plat. So we'd like to add the deferral allowance for the preliminary plat until we get to the later stage of development. We've talked to engineering about that. I don't know if this was just maybe an oversight on not getting that deferral for the preliminary plat added to it, but they've been nice enough to allow that deferral until we get in and do design drawings and drainage studies and everything else. So really, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And
Are you asking for a deferral on the unplatted portion of the land, or for the entire lot?
Just what we're final platting today is lot 1, and that's the 98 feet.
Yeah.
Kind of come up with this funny configuration to meet all the building code requirements, and then pare down, if you will, that our obligation for Dan Hank Lane improvements to just the 98 feet, and most of that's going to be part of our new entrance anyway. So yes, the deferral is for the 98 feet of frontage for
I was
Lot
talking
1.
about the drainage study.
Oh, the drainage study, well, I think it's it's in there for the final plat.
Okay,
It's allowed, so the deferral would be for the preliminary plat, because I believe it's listed on in here.
I mean, you're,
For the final plat, there is a deferral allowance, but it didn't specifically say deferral of the drainage study is one of the conditions of the preliminary plat.
okay. So what are you asking us to do?
To allow us to defer the drainage study on the preliminary plat.
Okay, so
Because it's already on.
the white land in this map is the only area that you're asking us to defer the drainage study on, because you're building on the final, right?
Well, the preliminary plat includes 1 and 2. So we'll do a drainage study for the preliminary plat when we kind of bring forward all the documents for the building permits on Lot 1.
Yeah,
And so the deferral is kind of for the preliminary plat approval and signatures, if you will. To get the preliminary plat signed off on, we'd have to submit a preliminary drainage study. So what we're asking for is to have that deferred.
Until the permitting?
Until the building permitting stays, because we'd have to do that for Lot 1. And we're going to include Lot 2 anyway, because it just makes sense to do all of it as one full drainage study.
Okay.
At that time.
Okay,
Sorry for the confusion there.
that's okay.
You are asking, though, for the 98 feet of pavement to be deferred, is correct?
Yes, ma'am. We would like a full variance from having
Right.
to do it, but if not, we would do the deferral agreement.
Deferred until building, or to permitting stage, or building, or,
Well, the deferral would come in and says if Dan Hanks is extended to the south, then we would come and do our portion. Because right now, we're kind of at the end of Dan Hanks Lane. There's not much reason for us to widen it unless, because the master thoroughfare plan shows Dan Hanks going south. And so, Air Motors recognizes that.
When this road goes in,
Yeah.
they would do that whole section, I think, is what.
Yes, yes.
The lot immediately south. So if they extend that road south, that's when it would trigger the improvement on that 100 feet or whatever of Dan
Yes,
Hanks
sir.
Lane.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Russell. Jeff, do you mind going back on the slides, just a couple, so that
The arrow.
everybody can kind of see what we're talking about here? Right there is perfect. So there's about 100 feet of frontage on Dan Hanks that they're requesting a full variance on.
Correct.
And what you're asking is for us to defer that variance until that little blue dotted road that's not there today is extended further south. Is that correct?
Correct, and I believe that the trigger for that too, one of the triggers would be that lot itself would have to be replatted because that cuts right through the lot, so that would take even more time for them to set that up.
Okay. All right.
Jeff, is there when we talk about the 98 feet, the remainder or the northern part of that, is there any trigger to widen that? Or is it just the 98 feet that Aero Motors is responsible for?
For now, just the 98 feet. They would have to do a final plat of those other sections.
So can you go back to the plat? Yes.
Yep. So they would have to, so in the
So the
areas in
little white areas on the west side would have to be final platted. The blue is what they're final platting today, Trinidad, and the white is what they're not platting. So if they came back and wanted to do something on that white area, that would be the only trigger for the widening of Dan Hanks. Make sense?
Yes, it's just, I'm looking at portions of it being widened and other portions not being widened, and it creates hardship down the road.
Yes, it does. Okay, does anyone else wish to speak on this case? If so, please come forward, state your name and address or single-member district. Okay, I'm going to close public comment.
I'd like to say a little something.
Yes, sir.
This is my first planning commission meeting. I appreciate appreciate y'all having me here. I'll give a quick elevator pitch. Fortunately, my elevator goes pretty slow, and it's a pretty tall building, so bear with me. Nick Oman, I'm general manager of Air Motor Windmill. So we acquired our biggest competitor. We bought out a company in Lubbock here several months ago. In so doing, we realized we needed quite a bit more space in order to accommodate that acquisition. So we were kind of at a crossroads. Do we buy? Do we build? Construction costs are high right now. And so we had an initial meeting with the city with a lot of Russell's staff and sat down and determined that as long as, or at least it was said at the meeting, as long as we were under 12,000 square feet, a replat was not necessary. So that was kind of the trigger for us to go ahead and build and not buy. And then we get into this process about a month, and oh, by the way, we made a mistake. It's 5,000 square feet. So that was a pretty huge curveball to us.
Yes, sir.
So we've just been kind of waiting on this meeting and kind of figuring out which way to go forward. I mean, we obviously, when we planned this, we weren't planning on widening roads. We weren't planning on drainage studies. I mean, we have X amount of dollars to spend, and I'm already over budget with steel price and everything else. I'm not looking for sympathy on that. That's just, economics.
Yeah.
But, I would ask for just a little bit of grace and mercy in lieu of that mistake. And everybody makes a mistake. Everybody's human. I'm not blaming anybody or trying to hang anybody on a cross. But we're a 131-year-old company. We're very proud to be in San Angelo. We're not going anywhere. As Russell said, our windmills are all over the nation, and a lot out in the world, and it's very proudly displays San Angelo, Texas, up on that vein. We're proud of that, and we're ready to expand. I've already hired more people. I have more people that I'm going to hire. So we're trying to put Air Motor back on the map, and with a little bit of help from the city, it would be an easier process to do. So.
Yes, sir.
All right, my elevator's come to the top, so I'll have a seat. Thank y'all for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close public comment.
Jeff, can you pull up the other map that shows where Dan Hanks kind of would potentially jog down through that other property? What is on that? Sorry, I can't see it far. So what is below the property right now? That white building?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check that. I know this is a industrial heavy commercial area.
Okay.
And that blue dotted line indicates that's a future collector. So of course that hasn't been built yet.
Right.
At some
It's
point in the
proposed.
future.
Right.
And just so you guys know, that those lines are very conceptual, that were done on a big scale.
Right.
Very likely when that came in, because of the development on that property to the south, it would continue south straight a little
okay.
farther before it swung out.
Okay.
The reason it swings out is that farther south that you can't see, it ties into another road. But yeah, it's really not related to this case,
Right.
but just so you guys know that
Yeah.
there's flexibility there in terms of where that road ends up.
Got it. Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else want to share thoughts or make a motion?
So I would like to make a motion to, the preliminary plat, to approve that, defer the drainage study. On the final plat, to approve that, and also approve the variance.
The full variance, Terry?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary plat and to approve the final plat and grant a full variance on
Paving width.
the paving width. What about the drainage study?
Yes. I think it was already,
That's a deferral of the drainage
deferral,
study to
that's on the-
permitting.
The drainage study is on the preliminary.
To the permitting stage.
To the permitting stage.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So 5-1.
5-1.
All right. Second replat of Hawkins Edition. Request for approval of a second replat of Hawkins Edition being 2.447 acres northwest of the intersection of Millbrook Drive and College Hills Boulevard, and a variance from Chapter 10-3A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 56 feet for College Hills Boulevard and urban arterial street.
Thank you. Good morning, Commission. Zach Rainbow, Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this is a second replat of the Hawkins Edition, Tract 5. This is northwest of the intersection of Millbrook Drive and College Hills Boulevard. This is the YMCA. They are replatting 2 tracks for an expansion or an addition project. Here's a picture of the plat. Get to the variance. They're requesting a variance. The current paving width of College Hills Boulevard is 56 feet. The minimum requirement is 64 feet. Here are the analysis of staff. Basically, the main point here is the future expansion of College Hills Boulevard is already on a capital improvements project, has already been funded, and I believe city staff is wrapping up the construction documents. So the project will move forward even if this variance is granted. Just touches on the CIP again. And these were all reviewed pursuant to the statement purposes in the LDSO, the comprehensive plan, and the subdivision ordinance. Staff recommendation is approval for the final replat and the variance as well. And the conditions are listed in your staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right. Anyone have questions for the staff? I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Russell Gully with SKG, Single Member District 6 for this one. We'd ask you to approve this and the deferral as recommended by staff, and then also, the variance, I got deferral on the brain. And then defer the sidewalk, deferring sidewalks is just stuck on my brain too. Deferring the fire hydrant, sorry, it's been a busy morning. Defer the fire hydrant until kind of the building permitting stage. We're actually working with the architect. YMCA is going to be redoing that facility there, so as part of all that renovation, they're going to be making improvements and doing stuff there. We've been talking to the city engineer about how to and where to place the fire hydrant, so we've got that on the plans. We just like that fire hydrant requirement to be deferred so that they can put it in while they're doing all the building improvements and not kind of tie up the plat waiting to try to get someone out there to put a fire hydrant in, so be happy to answer any questions.
Staff would be supportive of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gully. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, we're going to close public comment.
Make a motion to approve as presented and to defer the fire hydrant.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the staff and to defer the fire hydrant until the building permitting phase. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right. K, first replat of lots 9, 10, and 11, Block 1, Arroyo Addition. Request for approval of a first replat of lots 9, 10, and 11, Block 1, Arroyo Addition, and a variance from Chapter 9, 3A2 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 30 feet for Antonio Street, an urban local street.
Okay, Zach Rainbow, Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this is a first replat of lots 9, 10, and 11, Block 1 of the Arroyo Addition. That 5.681 acres is wrong. There's some conversion issues, so I apologize for some messed up PowerPoints. It's actually about half an acre total. They are wanting to build, there's an existing lot on that corner, or there's an existing house on that corner lot. The other two houses have been removed. They are wishing to replat in order to build new homes. Here's a picture of the lots here. 9A and 10A are a half foot deficient in width. That's administratively approved, which already has been done. Again, they're seeking a variance to maintain a paving width of Antonio Street to a minimum of 36 foot, or the requirement is 36 feet with a 4-foot sidewalk. In this case, they're requiring either 3 additional foot and a 4-foot sidewalk or 5 additional feet. City staff agrees with city engineering that the built-out nature of Antonio Street with curb and gutter, I believe it's 30 foot wide, is adequate. It's listed in your staff report. A more thorough breakdown of why staff supports that. There are no known topographical conditions. City staff believes the variances will not in any significant way vary the provisions of the applicable ordinances. Again, here's the rationale. City staff does recommend approval of the final replat and approval of the requested variance, subject to the conditions listed in your staff report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for the staff?
Can you go back to the survey or the drawing, please? Thank you.
I'm going to open up for public comment.
Russell with SKG, single member District 3 for this one. Be happy to ask you to approve this one as presented and with the variances as requested, and happy to answer any questions.
Is it 0.5 acres as opposed to 5? Is that the Zach?
Yeah.
0.5681 acres?
Yes.
Okay. Are the lots, do they meet the minimum square footage of the subdivision ordinance? I know you talked about an administrative approval on the width.
Is that 100 feet in depth there, Russell?
It's 130 feet.
130 feet deep.
Okay,
it
so yeah, they
says.
would meet the minimum.
Each one would be
square footage.
56.33 feet wide.
All right. Anyone have questions for Mr. Gully?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sylvia Martinez, and y'all sent me this letter saying Juan Banda deceased. My house, I've been there over 35 years. How is people to answer the letter for the planning if it's not even in the right name? I like them building these new houses, but it's a problem because we don't have no parking. Our streets are real narrow, and they got a house built next to me. They've never finished it. They hit my fence. It hasn't been fixed. I love these houses because it's beautifying our site. But if you want to put all these houses, y'all gotta figure out how you're gonna do the street because it's too narrow. The people park one here, and if they park a little bit, you can't even go through. And then you're not thinking about the loose dogs, you're not thinking about the kids playing in the middle of the street. So to me, it's down, and then we have all those cars from the collision. When they rent those cars, they come down, San Jacinto. They come down fast. They don't care, for nothing. And if y'all want to do the houses, that's fine with me, but the traffic. That's what I worry about, the traffic, because, you know, it's growing and growing, and then there's no, you know, our streets, you know. And I'm glad you gave that man some kind of break, because I wish they would give me a break too in things that I need. I keep paying.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right. I don't know how to address the issue that you've raised with the road width, simply because it's an existing neighborhood, and these thoroughfares have been cut and existing for years. But I do agree. I like that we're going in and adding new improvements to these lots in these older neighborhoods. I think it helps bring all of the homes around these new houses up, and it's good for our community. So I'm in support of approving this replat. Does anyone else want to share thoughts or make a motion?
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
I have a question,
Oh, yes,
including the
ma'am.
variance, including the variance of the street width.
Presented with the
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Terry.
Yes, okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve granting the variance for the road width. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? 6-0. All right, item L, first replat of lots 8 and 9, and second replat of lots 10 and 11, section 1, River Valley Estates. A request for a first replat of lots 8 and 9, and a second replat of lots 10 and 11, section 1, River Valley Estates, located north of River Valley Lane and approximately 835 feet west of the South Concho River, and a variance from Chapter 10-3A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a paving width of 24 feet for River Valley Lane, an urban local street.
Okay, Zach Rainbow, Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this is the first replat of the River Valley Estates lots here. These are ranch and estate lots, approximately 3.43 acres. The South Concho River is just off your screen there to the east. Here's a picture of the plat, just cleaning up some cut-up chunks of land. They are requesting a variance, as you mentioned, to maintain a paving width of River Valley Lane of 24 feet in lieu of the 36-foot minimum paving width. Due to its local nature and the fact that it's already built out, city staff and engineering were comfortable with recommending approval for the variance. The analysis can be found in your staff report. Again, we don't find that granting the variance would be detrimental, and due to the rural nature of the existing lot, staff does support the variance. Again, this rationale is listed in your staff report. City staff's recommendation to you guys is to recommend approval of the plat and the variance, subject to the conditions found in your staff report. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for Zach?
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak, please state your name and address or single-member district.
Hello, my name is Blake Wilde with Wilde Engineering. I live outside the city, so I don't know what to tell you there. They just request that you approve it as presented with the variance, so any questions?
Anyone have questions? Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, I'm going to close public comment.
Make a motion to approve the replat and the variance for paving.
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented, granting the variance for the paving width. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. M, replat of the east 50 feet of lots 5, 6, and 7 Lakeview Addition. A request for a first replat of the east 50 feet of lots 5, 6, and 7, Block 58, Lakeview Addition.
Okay, Zach Rainbow, Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this is a replat of the Lakeview addition. If y'all will remember, that portion identified by that skinny strip there where it has subject properties pointing to it is a alley that was approved to be closed by y'all. This is a condition of the approval. I believe it was a month or two ago. The property owner of Lot 10 actually owns all the properties surrounding the alley, so there are no ownership issues or claim to land. Here's just a picture of the plat. One of the conditions of approval is just to remove that old lot depiction there and just show the new lot they're creating. Again, it finalizes the replat of an alley closure approved. Replat consistent with the purpose statements in the LDSO. Staff does recommend approval, subject to the 3 conditions. They're typical conditions listed in your staff report. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions?
So we approved this 2 or 3 months ago, so I guess I'm
It was
confused
either
on.
last month or the month before.
Okay. I'm confused on why it's back. Usually when we approve that, then it goes on to city council. By this time, they've purchased that right-of-way and,
Right, so part of the condition of finalizing the closure is to plat it into a piece of property to make it a duly recorded lot of record.
correct.
So this is just a step to finalize that.
Okay,
It may just be moving forward faster than
Okay,
typically.
we just haven't had that in the past. It's gone from us to city council, they vote on it, and then, they do all that there.
Yeah.
So is this?
So this is the replat, and we brought it forward because it is finalizing the closure of a public right-of-way.
Right.
And so that's the reason it's before you, to see
Okay.
the replat.
Okay. I would have thought that was approved whenever we did it to start with, because that was one of the things to have the plat redrawn.
Yeah. Terry, if I can step in on this, this is basically going the other way first, so this is where they wanted to abandon an alley.
Right.
And that's what Zach was talking about, that's what was approved, and the condition of the alley abandonment is that they have to plat the alley into the adjacent
Sure.
property. Sometimes they'll come in with a new plat. This wasn't a new plat first, this was the alley abandonment, which then triggered the plat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this case, please come forward. State your name and address for single-member district. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone wish to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0. Rezonings. Yes.
My microphone's not on. It's totally up to you guys, and there's only one case. I know the folks from downtown San Angelo wanted to be here for the downtown district.
Yes, sir.
They had to leave for another meeting, and then they could be back after that. They might not make it back, but if you're open to considering the conditional use item first.
Sure.
Pushing the downtown item to after that, just to give them a little greater chance of being
Sure.
back.
So we are on conditional uses. City council has final authority for approval of right-of-way abandonments.
Of conditional uses, that was a typo.
City council has final authority for approval of conditional uses.
Okay, Kyle Warren, city planner.
Okay, I got to read this one in before you start. CU 21-13, West, or W, 1981 Loop 306. Request for approval of a conditional use to allow warehousing and freight movement in the general commercial zoning district being approximately 3.126 acres located at West 1981 Loop 306.
Apologize for jumping the gun, but Kyle Warren, city planner. This is CU 2113. It's a warehousing request. It's currently zoned general commercial. And there's this location off of Loop 306. As it stands, this is a small warehousing operation, and it meets parking requirements. I talked to the applicant. They do not plan on expanding the building that's already there. And it demonstrates community need for warehousing in the sense that it will create jobs. and it's also intended to maintain character of the neighborhood. And these are images. There was supposed to be, I think, an eastern image of that I guess didn't show up there. But this is the building he plans on doing all warehousing in. Like I said, he's not going to, he doesn't intend on expanding it anytime soon. It's a small operation. And this is the notice map for those opposed or in support of. As of doing this map, I had 3 in opposition, but as we walked in today, I actually got a 4th letter of opposition. And that's after 21 notices went mailed out. Our rationale for this is no change in neighborhood character. It's actually right by McCoy's, and across Loop 306 is another warehousing operation doing the same thing for alcohol, actually, and Glazers. And generally speaking, this doesn't really disrupt the neighborhood character. And all conditions of Section 406 have been met, being consistent with the zoning ordinance. And we couldn't find any effects on natural environment, as there's not going to be any expansion to the existing building. Creates needs for jobs, and there's no change in development patterns just because, again, he's not planning on expanding this building. We recommend approval of the request. 1, and these are the conditions of approval. The applicant shall obtain all required permits from the Permits and Inspection Division, including a change of occupancy. I do apologize, that should have been a 2. A privacy fence minimum of 6 feet height is required on the south side of the lot adjacent to residential lots. And again, this should have been a 3. All outdoor lighting shall be turned off between 10:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. And outdoor events shall be limited to between 6:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. And the 4th is all warehousing must be done indoors. That is it.
Could you go back to the conditions of approval? All outdoor lighting shall be turned off between 10:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. And all outdoor events shall be limited between 6:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m.
Yes, sir.
If the lighting is shielded to within the boundaries of the lot, why would we require them to turn the lights off? I'm assuming that they want the lighting for security purposes, is why I'm asking.
Right. It was just an extra step to prevent any light pollution for the residential lots to the south of that lot.
Okay.
And we just,
Currently, there's a 6-foot fence already behind that property that backs Colonial. So with any outdoor lighting, because that was the stone place before, right?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So is there currently lighting already in place in the back?
not that I know of.
I will say, staff's comfortable with either or, either shielding or the condition listed there, where it's turned off.
Okay.
So we'd be
Yeah.
comfortable with either or.
Our typical requirement would be for shielding. I think the concern there was those homes are right there and industrial type use with security lighting and parking lot lighting and all of that. It can be very difficult to shield it adequately from those residential areas, but if the condition is for that shielding, I think we, like Zach said, we would be comfortable with that.
Is there a yard space on this lot?
Yeah, it's behind the building.
I believe so.
Yeah, so there's like up in the front, they've got like some stacked stone, or at least the previous owner did. And then
Right.
in the back, there's a decent amount of space behind.
There's a massive area behind it.
Yeah.
So by converting it to warehouse, are we allowing for more outdoor storage than we would under general commercial? Do you guys, John, do you know?
No, we wouldn't. The CG standards would continue to apply in terms of storage, so they would still be limited to the 10%. This is
Okay.
just to allow in CG to get a warehousing, and I believe it's for liquor distribution, so it's a very miniature version of Glazers. In order to do that, they needed the conditional use, that extra step.
Okay, so what they're asking for is a conditional use to allow warehousing within the existing improvements.
Not
Is
the
that-
existing improvements, but on with the existing zoning. So instead of rezoning to like an office warehouse or industrial district, they can get the conditional use to allow that warehousing in the commercial district.
Okay.
But as Jeff said, it would still have the same limits in terms of outdoor storage, as opposed to a rezoning to industrial would allow much more outdoor storage. I think
So-
that probably works for them in this case because that type of use, typically the storage is indoors.
Right. So can they expand
The current.
the existing improvements?
Yes, they could build a fairly large building if that's what they wanted to do with this conditional use.
Okay?
So the letters in opposition, did they state, was it more or less the traffic pattern, or did they specify?
It was that trucks entering and exiting, at all times of day, noise and light pollution, those kind of things. And I also, again, I talked to the applicant, and he said just being a minor operation, it'd be like twice a month that trucks would come in and out of this, I believe. So it's not going to be, round-the-clock kind of warehouse operation at this point, at least as far as traffic is concerned.
Okay? Anyone else have questions for the staff? I'm going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please come forward, state your name and address or single-member district.
Hi, Bree Perks. My husband and I started Hasty Distributing. Right now I've had 3 shipments since we started in March, and I am delivering out of the back of my car. Our territory is Dallas-Fort Worth, so as we grow, I would likely get a warehouse there, so I'm not traveling back and forth quite as much, and I have sales reps there. If we do grow in this area and get new products, it would still be a small mom-and-pop operation. We're not looking to expand the building. I'm not looking to have semis that we own coming in and out. It would be, out of the back of a Suburban or a delivery van. So again, just a small operation, and this was a good investment property for us as well, so.
Okay?
Any other questions?
Thank you, Bree.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone want to give their insight or make a motion?
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I'm sorry, I just want to confirm that's as presented rather than changing it to allowing the shielded lighting?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't see the lighting as being an issue whatsoever, so I don't even think it needs to be in there.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right. John, if the downtown folks want to be a part of this discussion on the rezoning of downtown, I guess we could potentially table it.
Well, you might let Jeff present, because I think one of the options for you today is, one of the things that came up in our town hall meeting was the possibility of, we looked at shrinking it. It came up in the meeting. It might make sense to expand it back out a little bit on the Abe Coningheim side, which would result in a need to table it and notify a few more folks. So I guess I would rather make the presentation and get your input because, again, one of your options is to actually table it to the next meeting anyway.
Okay. Jeff, go right ahead. Let me read it in. Rezoning. City Council has final authority for approval of rezonings. Z2104. Downtown District. A request for approval to expand the boundary of the Downtown District Overlay Zone. Generally located north of Neff's Way, east of Cohenheim, south of 4th Street, and west of Emmerich.
All right, thank you. So we came to you in April. Let me just move this back here. Okay, so we came to you in April, and our map in April went a little bit further north up to Fifth Street, and also had included the Palmer properties. After talking to the applicants, we scaled this back a little bit. So we've taken out the Palmer feed at the corner, and then we've also taken everything between Fifth down to Fourth Street out. So all of the properties north of Fourth Street essentially were taken out. So the light purple line is what we're proposing to expand to. The dark purple line is what's already there. So after we came last time, some of the residents and business owners had suggested a town hall meeting to give more information, because we've had, obviously in the past, we do our best. We send all the mailed notices and we follow what we were given from the appraisal district, but not everybody reads their mail, and this was a big project. So we did do a town hall at the downtown public library, and all our staff was very helpful on September the 9th on Thursday night. We did get some feedback. One of the suggestions from the mayor was to possibly move the line. So the first option on your left is what we're proposing now, but the second option discussed was to include the area in the red here. I know it's hard to tell, but everything west of the red and south is actually the river corridor. So it'd be to add this area as well, go west of Koningheim all the way to the properties on David and Abe where the river corridor is. So this way, if you're driving up Koningheim, you're going to have design standards. And if you're driving west of Koningheim or on Abe, you have design standards. It just makes more sense to have one side of the street with good colors and materials, and then the other side to look tacky. So this was one of the suggestions. So you really have two options today. I'm going to pass out the maps that were produced at the town hall just because it's easier to see. So that hard copy poster board of the map, so essentially the area on the first map and the second in that light tan color, so between the dark purple and the light purple, that's what is being expanded to. And so that's one thought for today. If you all decide to include option 2 and go to the red area, we would need to, I think just if the downtown people aren't here, you could table this whole thing. We would come back next month and we would have the area that we're proposing plus the area in the red. So that is an option. We would just come back and then you could recommend approval of both, and then it would go on to council. So that's an option.
Do you mind if we ask questions while you're going through this, Jeff?
Please. I'm not going to, and that's it. I'm not going to go back over the rationale unless you want me to. We've discussed it already.
So the area that the mayor proposed adding, I guess that would be on the west side of the boundary, expanding the boundary westward.
Correct.
Are those lots currently in the river corridor, or are there any overlays of any kind with that land, or is it just regular zoning?
It's just regular zoning, so the red area essentially would make it part of this downtown district and go all the way to the river corridor. So essentially you'd have, all of this would be downtown, and then you'd start the river corridor. So that'd be one continuous area under design review.
And that was really part of the discussion. The first part of it, as Jeff said, was part of the idea is Abe and Konigheim are very major thoroughfares, and wanting to present a good image to visitors traveling on those corridors would be a good reason to include that. And so the discussion was to move it over to Abe, so a block over. Of course, that would leave just a 3-block little donut hole that's not in the river corridor and not in downtown. And so that's why we looked at pulling it over that additional block. That way, all of that area is either in the river corridor or the downtown. I would add that if you choose to table this and consider that additional area next month, it doesn't obligate you to include it. Those folks would get notified. We would bring it back next month, and you could still then go with the smaller area, but you could also go with the bigger area as well.
Jeff, what are the changes in the red area? What changes would those clients or those customers see if we include it in that? Is that predominantly homes, or is that predominantly businesses in that red section, the expanded area?
I believe it's a combination of homes and offices mostly, and with the Koningheim side being mostly commercial. There's a couple hotels and a car dealership on the west of Koningheim. So what all this would mean is, by expanding the downtown district, the underlying zoning would not change. I want to be clear. So if you're a retail business, you could still operate as a retail business, but your storefront would need to go through a review, mostly go to their Design Historic Review Commission to review colors and materials.
If they're making changes.
Correct.
So if someone wanted to remodel the exterior of their building and they were in this downtown overlay area, they would have an extra step to submit their concept plan to a board for approval. Is that
And I would
correct?
add that, in partial answer to that question, a lot of that, as Jeff said, is residential, and our design standards now largely exclude or exempt residential. So if a homeowner is improving their home, they would not be subject to these new standards. It's really only for businesses. And so if one of those homes were converted to an office or business, which is happening in that area, they would be subject to those rules, but home remodeling would not be subject to that.
Jeff, how about benefits to those customers? Is there, because it's now part of a downtown overlay district, are there benefits to that being incorporated? I mean, do the customers get any additional widening of roads? Do they get anything else if we include them in this process?
I'm going to speak from my experience in doing this project, and I'll open it up to our rest of our team as well. But one thing is, if all of those owners, and mostly in what's currently downtown along Chadburn and Beauregard, have done a great job of come in and gone through the approval process, and you see the changes along Chadburn between, I'd say, 2nd Street and down over the last 5 to 7 years. I can't say for sure because I'm a planner, not an economist, but it often will help protect property values. It will enhance the neighborhood, and then it will create that incentive for other businesses as well, so we don't get something really tacky or horrible downtown. And most business owners are very cooperative. The other thing to note is some of those, I just wanted to point this out, the yellow properties that are historic, they would already need a historical review that would be much stricter than this. So we would normally waive, if they needed, they were now downtown district and historical, we would waive the higher fee, the downtown district fee, and just charge for the historical. They'd still need this approval as well, but again, most of those are already regulated much stricter than this. So, and again, if you're further away, the further away you generally are from downtown, and closer you are to more industrial, they're obviously going to get treated a little bit differently. It's not going to be as rigorous or strict as, say, if you're right downtown next to all the churches. But even then, the policies as they stand are fairly flexible. So I think it's going to help property values and just help enhance the area, and our staff may have some other thoughts as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that one point, is that what we've heard from some business owners is the reason many business owners in the downtown like this design district. They don't necessarily particularly like having to go for a review of what they're doing to remodel, but they appreciate that their neighbor has to go through it. Because if you put a lot of investment in a building downtown, you want to know that your neighbor is not going to come in and do something completely at odds of the aesthetics you're trying to do. And so it basically assures that minimum floor of a development standard for everyone, which does keep the property values up. You know, one property owner can't completely junk up their property and affect every one of their neighbors.
And I didn't have the tiers layer here, and I'm not sure, maybe I shouldn't have gone there. I don't know if it's in the tiers district, but some of these properties that might fall under tiers, if they're making improvements to their building, like adding things, you know, on the property, they might also be able to have tiers money, but I'll let, if that comes up.
Okay. I'm sorry. No, my question's about zoning. You're saying overlay, so the underlying zoning remains?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's okay. So like most of these properties are going to be zoned, they're downtown already, so they're zoned CBD.
Right.
So they're going to have the parking exemption. They're going to allow household living. They're not going to have any setback requirements, at least not from planning. So there's a lot of those things are already in place. It's just when they go to add on to their building or when they have to make exterior improvements. And some of the things too, we have a list if needed. We talked about this already, so I didn't want to go through it again. But like if you're just changing your paint color, that's a very quick 2-day process, administrative approval. So not everything they do is going to have to go to the design board, and they're going to pay that lower fee to just do those kind of minor improvements.
Okay. So are there any industrial zoned lots within the downtown proposed areas?
The roofing, Harrison Roofing, didn't respond to the
Hartman.
notice, or Hartman,
Yep.
sorry, didn't respond to the notice, and then when they were contacted, they pulled out, and then we pulled out Palmer's as well.
Yes,
So
I
think that was
don't,
all fourth.
I believe none of the industrial are in. There might be a spot on the northeast corner. If needed, while someone else is talking, I can go check that quickly.
Well, I don't know that it matters. If there's existing industrial zoning or light manufacturing zoning, those uses aren't permitted under CBD zoning, correct?
That's why they were pulled out before.
Correct, but again, this doesn't change their zoning at all, so all those
So
same
they're still
industrial
allowed to do the exact
are
same
allowed.
thing with the property that they've got.
Correct, it's just that any exterior improvements would have to be reviewed for their design by the DHRC or staff if it's an administrative approval.
Okay.
That's really the only change here.
I was
It's
going to
not
say,
about
so the only thing
uses
that
or-
we're really doing is adding an administrative review of exterior improvement work?
Well, administrative or to the Design and Historic Review
yeah,
Commission if
a
it's.
review.
Yeah, a review, correct.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have questions? I think what developers like most when they're looking at investments is an understanding of the predictability of the area around them. And I think bringing design review into this area is potentially a good thing. One of the concerns I have, having served on the River Corridor and Downtown Review Board, was having a clear definition of the guidelines for the improvements that are made. And I think it's changed since I served on that board, but it was almost, I don't think it's fair to leave the aesthetic of a decision that's being made on improvements to a board. In your personal opinion, do you like the siding that I've chosen, yes or no? Instead, I think it would be better to have guidelines, acceptable materials, acceptable colors.
So I just wanted to-
And if there are exceptions to that, it goes through and it's almost like a rubber stamp if you have those guidelines in place. And if they're looking for a variance for some reason, then the board's there to review it and make a decision. That's the only concern I have about this overlay is having some framework, some guidelines for what's acceptable design, so that it's not at the whim of someone's personal opinion whether or not it gets approved.
I would just briefly answer that to say we have made some changes recently. Jeff mentioned one, the paint colors. Now there's really no discretion on paint colors. If it meets a historic color palette, for example, it's automatically approved. And so we've tightened down some of that. I'll also add that we've got in sort of on our to-do list, something that City Council has asked us to do is address your exact concern of creating guidelines that are a little more specific.
Yes.
We've talked about this significantly with the DHRC. One of the problems is the more specific you get on those guidelines, the less flexibility there is. And so we've, in the past, I guess, the city has erred on the side of more flexibility so that the commission can approve things that may not necessarily meet the strict requirements of the guidelines. So just as you think about that, that's the balance we try to find is, there are some cities in the state that are very, this color brick and
Yes.
this, it gets very specific, which is very good for predictability. It's not very good for allowing flexibility for the developer. So that's the balance we'll try to achieve as we go about rewriting those standards.
The current standards use the River Corridor Master Development Plan used to include downtown, and then
Yes.
some of y'all remember we turned it one district into 3 districts, and so we still work off that plan. like John was saying, it's fairly flexible right now, so that if the closer you are to downtown, in that downtown core, those standards are a little bit tighter. And then there's another section in that master plan that says if you're outside of the CBD, what the standards are. And generally, they're looking for materials and colors are consistent, and that flexibility allows business owners to have a little more leeway into what they do.
And it does speak a lot to context. So if you're in an industrial area at the north end of this area, the requirements that you would be judged by are very different than if you're, at the corner of Concho and Chadburn, for example.
Okay. Well, I think that's important. I like predictability. I think investors would like predictability, and I think that's ultimately the goal of this is to raise the standard and beautify this area and continue to encourage redevelopment and revitalization efforts. So,
and I think we have some members here with downtown San Angelo and some of the public that might want to speak. Before we do that, I just want to make it clear. So the area in red was not notified. That came up after we sent the notices out. So really, if you have, I guess, a couple options today. You would either, if you want to table, you could table that. We would still have to bring that area in the red back, even if you suggested to us to include it. We could not vote on the area in the red today, so it's really just for your information.
Okay.
I would add, if you're comfortable with the area that's already been recommended, you could actually go ahead and approve that today. And then at the next meeting, you would just be considering that area in red, or you could table the whole thing and take it all at once. Either one would work.
Okay. I'm inclined to tackle it all at once. I don't know how you guys feel, but if we add that area, I think we wait a month, let everyone receive their notice, and move from there. I guess at this point, we need to open it up for public comment. So I'd love the input of those that have attended. And I saw Dell in here a minute ago. Please come forward, yes. If you would, state your name and your address or single-member district.
Yes, and thank you. I just spoke with Dell, and he was kind enough to let me come. I'm supposed to be in a hearing in 30 minutes, and so forgive me. My name's Karen Best. I'm an attorney with the law office of Karen S. Best. I'm at 202 West Beauregard, Suite E. So on that wonderful old Western auto building that's been stuccoed over many years ago, I'm the little office right in the middle, and he holds my loan. So anyway, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As you know, I've spoken to you before when this first came up before the commission, and in the public comment and library meeting that we had over the issues, the issue of expanding it to the water came up, which really makes more sense. If you look on your map there, my property, I believe, is number 66. I'm close to it, I think so. Anyway, my building is right next to Emanuel Episcopal Church. And so as far as this being a business downtown overlay, we've heard a lot of correction of this isn't a historic overlay, and we understand the distinctions now, but it is still, under the materials that were handed out to the public, historic. Historic is used, historic and cultural is all over the paperwork that came from the city, including a color palette, none of which would be colors I would have painted this building, and I think the other business owners would have painted our building. But we do have a cute little peanut butter number with the bright navy awnings outside right across the street from the courthouse. So if you look at where we are, right in that niche off of Harris, at the courthouse, we are surrounded by business. We're backed up against Cohenheim by business. When you look at the materials from the city handed out talking about this overlay of the business downtown, the picture provided is one of, I believe, Miss Hattie's, which is, I'm not at Miss Hattie's or maybe Eggemeyer's, all the way down away from us. We don't see that traffic, nor do we benefit where we are from that traffic. Right. In fact, as I've mentioned before, we're somewhat, unfortunately, mistreated by that traffic because there are a lot of issues that have come with the expansion of downtown in the historic area, especially in the serving of alcohol. And so with our businesses, where we have people coming in to conduct business having to do with courts, we are often outside of our building washing. We just installed water, in fact, with water hoses so that we don't have to carry water from our sinks in our bathrooms and kitchens inside to wash the feces off of our sidewalks and the urine off of our walls. There aren't enough bathrooms to accommodate the business that is in historic downtown and the new business of historic downtown, unfortunately. And so as that traffic dissipates and goes to wherever they're going, unfortunately, we end up with all kinds of issues. So when the question came up and the mayor made the suggestion that what we are doing is making a good presentation as you come down Abe and Cohenheim for visitors coming into San Angelo, then that starts to make sense for us, because we're backed up by the tire company, fast food restaurants, that little motel hotel court that goes down as you come over the Concho. Luke knows there at the bank. There's all kinds of stuff that if you really wanted to take the business area of this downtown district and make this make sense in a way that benefits us as the business owners having to do with the court areas, then you would take this all the way to the water. You'd expand this, not just to the edge of Cohenheim where our business is backed up against this, but you'd take it constructively, effectively, all the way to the water to include the area in red.
Yes.
Then this starts to make sense. Frankly, we're backed up by the Butterfield building. So when you come into our pretty area, Butterfield definitely would benefit from being redone in a way that's wonderful. But unfortunately, in imposing all of these different changes onto it, I'm afraid that just encourages these particular owners to not do anything, okay? Because there's a fee. They don't pay a fee for anything in any of their properties. And I know that the city has worked very hard to try and fix that particular issue. But as it is, there's only so much you can do, even with the overlay of a business district. With regard to the expansion, you take in both sides of Cohenheim, both sides of Cohenheim. You capture those businesses in Abe. You capture those motor courts and other areas under development that come around by the parks. And now the business area starts to have some sort of cohesive idea of identity that is really lacking in the first grouping there, the proposed downtown district, alongside that strip going down Cohenheim. I can't speak to the businesses that go on the other sides. I'm not familiar enough with them, but I'm very familiar with the areas that are in here, and I'm very familiar with what I drive past going back and forth every day, whether I'm picking up my child from Ambleside or I'm going back home into Santa Rita. I also am hoping that by including the other businesses within the red area, we then have some participation by those groups that are included in this overlay that would come to address some of the other issues having to do with safety and implementation of some infrastructure that may make this whole concept work for everybody included, and not just so much to benefit a cohesiveness that doesn't offend the downtown historic area, which is beautiful, by the way. But if we make this a true business district, let's take in the businesses that are here, and that has to take in the areas between Abe and Cohenheim and all the way to the river. Then, as people come across the Concho River into San Angelo, or they come in off the loop, or they're coming up from the south, wherever they're coming from, we enter into downtown, what we all know as downtown. And that way, our design standards are cohesive. Our color palettes, if they change with mood or whatever the consistencies are, we have something that builds consistently across that entire business area of downtown. Thank you.
Thank you,
I was going to
Karen.
say, and I think staff agrees with Ms. Best and with the mayor on this. I think when we first did this, because the CBD line kind of stops at Koningheim, we have been expanding our CBD and our downtown sort of in pieces. So we didn't want to necessarily go too far in the beginning, but I think after the town hall and hearing some of that positive feedback, I mean, I think we would be in support of moving it to the red line as well.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak?
Excuse me, Del Velasquez, downtown San Angelo. We totally agree with Ms. Bess. We think that this extension needs to occur. Back in 2004, when the state came down to look at our application for creating Main Street City, downtown San Angelo becoming a Main Street City, the boundaries were expanded out, and I'll tell you, on the north end, they were up to 6th Street. On the east side, Main Street. On the west was the, I've lost track. I think it went all the way to Washington, all the way to Washington Street. And on the south, Washington, because Washington rolls back up to 6th Street. So that's the Main Street geographic boundaries. The reason was they expect us to grow our downtown district as a Main Street city. And this is accommodating towards meeting that goal. We have expanded from 2004, 16 years ago, when all those boundaries were given out to Main Street. And so it all makes sense. We want, especially Cohenheim and Abe Street, to be accommodating in relationships to the aesthetics. I'm sure all of y'all have driven into communities coming in from out of town, and you go, oh my gosh, what's going on here? This doesn't look good. Well, we want to protect that as far as downtown is concerned. So as Ms. Bess already alluded to, a lot of traffic comes in off of Abe and Cohenheim. So by expanding this area to be able to give us the assurance and protection of property values, et cetera, we believe this is the right thing for us to do. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Del.
I'm Jess Stanford. I am here to represent the Emanuel Episcopal Church. And this is a little, I guess, administrative detail. We're a historical building and have been for many, many years. Probably one of the first in San Angelo. But when we saw this, some of our people had a concern. Well, then we're going to have to do 2 different applications for whenever we deal with our historical commission, which we've been doing for years and for considerations. And that maybe for us at downtown and historical all be whenever we want to make a change or get an approval, it all included one particular application and one fee rather than 2. And that's our basic thought, and there's a reason why we had a little problem with it to begin with, but we're on board because everything that we do, we consider ours, except one thing we happened to screw up because you all changed the rules a couple of years ago on maintenance. And we did not think of or consider maintenance when we redid our roof, so we got cited for a violation and we corrected that, but we did not know that maintenance was, for us, a change is concerned, because we always consider even our roof as part of our deal. But that was just a little screw up on our part because we didn't know any better. But if some administrative thought there could be done, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
And I think in his presentation earlier, Jeff mentioned that someone like that's
Yeah, with a
already
historic-
historically zoned, that's a stricter review process already. So although technically they would have to go through both, there wouldn't be two fees, or it would all be run at the same time. So it wouldn't create an additional administrative burden on any applicant.
Okay.
Chris Yachts, 202 West Beauregard, right around the corner here. I was very much opposed to the original drawing. To me, that wasn't actually a business district expansion. It was an expansion of the historic district in another words. I mean, with the paint colors and all like that. With the new red, I'm more accepting of it. It makes more sense. Beauregard is the east-west entrance into downtown, and Beauregard, from where we're at on Reno, nothing. I mean, we've got nothing. There's nothing. You know, we got Butterfield Building, we've got Goodyear, we got the City Hall. It makes more sense this way. A lot of my original opposition to it was we're surrounded by governmental buildings. I look at an ugly, abandoned bank drive-through across the street from me, but that's the county. Nothing's going to be done about that. The sheriff's office down here. I mean, there's nothing historical or pretty about that building. The original way, I mean, I will stand in opposition to that. I'm more accepting of the other, and I just wanted to, it makes more sense and might benefit us more as being part of downtown. We don't own restaurants or bars, so the visitors really, we're professional offices. We're closed at that time. It really doesn't do a lot except impose more restrictions on us as business owners. But I could not be in opposition as much to the red. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Turn this on. Can I just get your name again and the address of your
Chris
property?
Yachts, 202 West.
Oh, Chris. Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else wish to speak on this matter? I'm going to
Just
close.
before we close, I just wanted to be transparent here and just very quickly go over the notification. This was the original notification that was sent out. We moved the line south of 4th Street. So this basically, except for those two owners you see in here and here, all of the other objections that we had were in the area that was already part of the downtown. So in essence, it's just those two. One of them was Mr. Sanford, and so this, I believe, has been addressed, so that just leaves the one up here. So when that same owner has come back. So for the new public expansion, we only included the expansion area because we had already notified. And so the updated list, out of the 90 notices, we had 2 in favor, 1 in opposition, and then Mr. Sanford had, I'd just call that no objection. And then there was nobody within the new 200 feet that had any objection. So because most of the industrial owners were taken out, that significantly reduced the number of opposition down to just the 1. And the one that's opposed is the school district with the Central Freshman Campus did submit a letter saying that they were opposed, so I just wanted to make sure that was on record.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close public comment and open it up for discussion amongst us. I think the proposed addition of the blocks west of this boundary that we're looking at makes sense. I like it. I like that idea. I remain concerned about the process by which these property owners are going to be subjected to when they're looking at making improvements. I would very much like to see what's proposed to the DHRC or whatever review board is going to be looking at, the impact of this overlay, whatever the guidelines are there. So my preference would be to expand the downtown area and maybe look at the standards a little bit more.
Did you
Anyone else
all
have thoughts?
want a copy of the River Corridor Master Development Plan? Because that is on the planning, I believe it's just the planning website, and I can forward you a link to that later if that would help you, and that shows what we currently review as part of our process.
That'd be great, Jeff.
I think that would help.
And just so you know, any revisions to that will go through first the DHRC, then to this group and to City Council, so you'll all get an opportunity to see any of those proposed changes.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, what is the fee when somebody comes to, do we know?
So if it's administrative that the planning director can approve, it's $195. If it needs to go to the Design Historic Review Commission, it's $385. I believe if it's just in the downtown and it's just paint color, I believe there's no fee. And if it's like a like-for-like replacement of a historical, it's like $90. So those little ones are either no fee or very minor, and the maximum would be $385.
Okay.
Again, if you're historical and downtown, you're only paying the $100, the lower fee. You're not paying the $385.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Anyone else have thoughts they want to share?
I'd like to make a motion to table it until we can get the notification out to the red area and include that.
Okay.
I agree. I think we need to look at it all as one. So I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to table, and a condition of that tabling would be to notify the expanded area, expanding the boundary westward. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0 to continue. All right, director's report.
Just have one thing, as you may recall, we are working on an ordinance update for the sidewalk ordinance. That is likely coming to you. We thought it might be in October, but we were asked to have one more meeting with our development task force, which you all will be notified of the date for. So we're looking at November. Since that could be a fairly big issue and take up some time, we're proposing for your consideration having a special meeting just for that, so that it won't, have a meeting like this and then having, that discussion on top of it. So your choice really is to have an extra long meeting or to have a special meeting just for that. We were looking at, when we typically do that, we try to go like about halfway between this meeting and the next meeting, which between the October and November would put it on Monday, November 1st. So you might check your calendars for that. We'll be sending you out an email. The alternative date might be the week following. And so, again, we'll send you an email with more information about that and be asking you, are you available that date? But also looking just for your preference. Would you rather do it at a separate meeting or just throw it onto the existing regular meeting?
And I'm sorry, John, you said November 1st?
Yes.
21st.
November 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Future meeting and agenda announcements. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. Monday, October 18th, 2021. Adjournment. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
To adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So 6-0, it's 11:20.